Hello! My name's Nick Hinton, and I'm hoping this will be a quick presentation on my fencing background and some information around fencing that I hope can help Gettysburg come to a decision about what they want to do next with the fencing program down there. I really like the kids that are in your group and are in the club, and I really, really love fencing. So anything that I can do to kind of help take it to the next level, um, I'd like to be able to do that. And that's what I'm going to try to do. So, I'm Monitor at Arms. I have an MBA, and that helps me in my daily life where I own Hinton Consulting. I work as a consultant to various groups and various clients. And then I also own Sal Hinton, which is a fencing company. Hey! And Hinton Operations, which I use to help me manage my multiple companies because things get complicated once you go past one. All right. So, next slide. I love fencing. I hope this picture somewhat conveys how much happiness I have in this activity, in this sport. It's just what I do all the time. Yes, it's a great sport, and there's so much more to it than just on the strip activity, on the fencing strip. There's a community, there are people, you can fence for literally forever. There's a statistic I've got down here in the slide deck later on where the youngest person who has a membership with the United States Fencing Association is 3 years old. How that works, I don't know either. The oldest person with USA membership is 103. So it is a 100-year age span, though. It's incredible. So this is a quick overview of who I am. I own Sal Hinton. Sal means hall or fencing hall typically. So it's a traditional name for a fencing establishment. I'm the head coach for Shippensburg University. I am a coach at the West Shore Fencers Club, which is right over in Camp Hill. I'm an instructor for the Harrisburg Area HEMA Academy, a secretary of the United States Fencing Association's Harrisburg Division. So I'm going to get into the slide deck a little bit later on where we talk about divisions and how the United States Fencing Association breaks down regions and areas of fencing and what that means. But the short is that any communication that needs to be done with the National Fencing Office, National United States Fencing Association, comes through me, effectively. That's the short answer. If it is from the South Central 13 counties of Pennsylvania, which includes Gettysburg. And additionally, I'm the secretary currently for the Historic European Martial Arts Alliance. With that one, that is the national nonprofit that oversees all HEMA in the United States. And I'm the national secretary for that one. Certification-wise, I am the monitor. I am a monitor at arms. Monitor means coach. That's what it translates to. And it means I'm a coach in all three weapons. So foil, epee, and saber. This is a foil that I'm waving around as a lovely hand prop. This is an epee. They're slightly different. And then saber. Once again, slightly different. I'm not going to go into the weapon differences or anything else like that. I'm going to try not to. I'm going to try and mainly present on who I am as a coach, and then fencing as a sport for colleges and what it could mean. But there are three weapons. That's what they look like. As a monitor at arms, part of the distinction with that is that each weapon tests and certifies separately. So in fencing, we compete in each weapon separately. We compete in each weapon separately, and we coach each weapon separately, and we referee each weapon separately. There are similarities. The footwork is mostly the same. The way the strip, the size of the area on which we fence is the same. 90% of the rules are the same between them. And the base protective layer, plastron, fencing pants, shoes, socks, jacket, and most of the mask are all identical across all three. But there are some minute differences actually, depending on how high that skill level goes, there can be massive differences in how all of the three weapons are actually trained and done. And it is very common, actually, to find coaches who are one weapon specific, and it is exceptionally common to find fencers who are one weapon specific, especially as you get higher and higher up the fencing ladder. But I'm a monitor at arms, so I actually do all three. And that's been awarded to me by the United States Fencing Coaches Association, USFCA, who is the U.S. domestic body that is recognized by the AAI, which is the international body that trains, certifies, and recognizes coaches for fencing. Additionally, in terms of three weapons, I'm actually a three-weapon referee as well. And so I have gone through, taken my exam, taken my tests for épée, foil, and saber. Now, there are other levels to coaching and to refereeing. Monitor is your, it's not your entry-level coach, but it's definitely not your master-level coach. So I do want to say that. I am not a master-level coach. I am just a monitor. I'm working towards my Prevo with one day way down the line. Hopes for master, but that is not even a thought right now. I'll sell myself, but I don't want to oversell myself. So, achievements. Oh, wow. Okay, now we get to the achievement page, right, as I say that. I'm currently rated in the top 2% in all three weapons. I'm a rated fencer. And with that, I have a personal podium rate of 70%, over 70%. Which means when I go to events, I have a pretty good chance of coming home with some jingle, coming home with some bling. And as we're going to see in some photos, I've not done a great job tracking it over the years. But we're going to see in some photos that additionally, when I take students to competitions, they oftentimes will walk away with some medals as well, which is actually, as a coach, pretty amazing to feel and to see. Like, it's a pretty amazing feeling to see your student go to competitions and then also start winning things and then consistently be winning things. So, I'm the only division fencer, which means I was rated and then qualified to get to nationals, the division fencer in the country, who fenced in all three weapons at Summer Nationals this past summer. Summer Nationals is the largest single fencing event in the country. You will have several thousand fencers descend on a city for about 2 weeks and then compete across all ages, across all types of people, teams, groups, weapons. Multiple countries will even fly in for these. It's insane and it's amazing. But like I said, it's rare to find fencers who do all three weapons, especially at the highest level. And I'm the only person in the country who did that as a division fencer. There were some veteran fencers, like Vet 50s, Vet 60s, Vet 70, I think, who did all three weapons. But I was the only one who fenced as a divisionally rated fencer in the country on all three weapons this summer. All right. I've had multiple students actually also go to compete at nationals. I had a student a couple years ago out in Ohio for that national event. I've had students travel out to other nationals as well. I'm the armorer of the American Small Sword Symposium, and so I am very familiar with equipment and parts, and we'll get into that later too. At this point, I've trained with numerous Olympians and Paralympians as well. I am not one, but I have trained with them. And they've been my coaches, my mentors, and people that I am happy to call friends now. So they're good people. I've had students that have gone across 3 continents and fenced, because fencing, it's international. The rule sets are the same, mostly. Europe does things a little different, or the US does things a little different. Depending on how we want to look at that, they're almost identical. The weapons don't change, at least. And so I had a student a couple years ago when they did a study abroad in New Zealand, took her fencing equipment with her to fence in New Zealand. It was actually kind of cool. It's still cool. Other achievements for my students is I've had students achieve also into the top 2% and become rated. And I've had students who have become monitors in épée and monitors in foil. And that is also pretty darn awesome. All right, timelines. 20 2013, I started fencing with Shippensburg. They just launched a new club on campus, new fencing club, and I had previously been sports all my life, and then suddenly wasn't when I got to college. I was a little too short to join the football team, despite the fact that I was like the head captain back in my high school. So I was like, I want to still do something athletic, and fencing showed up, and I was like, I always want to do this. So I started doing it. 2016, they had me stick around and become the fencing coach there. And that's when I started learning that there was this much larger, wider world to fencing. And I joined up with the West Shore Fencers Club, which is one of the places I now coach at. Through that club and the head coach there, I started learning about the national scene. And so I started going out and competing at it. I ended up becoming the secretary of the Harrisburg division and became a monitor in foil. Then I became a 3-open referee. And then I started getting into classic and historic fencing. And then I started going out in 2018, won my first gold medal at a national event. Started competing even more, and then I started organizing these events to get more people involved and help spread these and grow them further. And I started being asked to actually travel out to other events. I went out to Pittsburgh. I've been up to Massachusetts now, Connecticut. Like I said, I'll be in Maryland this Saturday, teaching and presenting at an event. And I've been invited to come down for that. In 2019, I became a monitor in saber and epee, and I finally then became the trifecta monitor at arms. It was also the first year one of my students went and competed at nationals, and that was the first time one of my students became a monitor themselves. 2020 then I founded Sal Hinton, and we had a plague, and that slowed things down. So in 2021, I started actually buying and selling equipment and became an equipment vendor, which led me to getting to know the equipment space and the products and what people use, what's good, what's not, really, really well. Because it just became part of my business and part of my operations. I just ordered 60 pounds of epee blades. So it's been an interesting time. In 2022 then, so this year finally, I actually became rated, and that's when I entered the top 2%, and that's when I could qualify and go to nationals as a division fencer. And so with that as well, this was the first year that one of my collegiate students became rated and entered the top 2% themselves, which is exceptionally exciting. And then I also became the champion of the American Small Sword Symposium, which is just kind of also fun and is leading to some other event conversations that we're going to get into. All right, that was a lot going into things. What is fencing? Fencing is the art of attack and defense with a weapon. The written treatises on fencing date all the way back to the 1400s. Modern fencing, though, in terms of modern Olympic games, started up in 1896, and it is one of only 5 sports to have been present for every single summer games. And crazily, despite the fact that we are trying to stab each other with swords, modern fencing is safer than ping pong. I'll explain. So, combination of protective equipment. We wear protective mesh masks. We wear puncture-resistant garments in multiple layers. So that way, if one fails, the next still protects us. We have gorgets and foldovers in our garments built in, so that way things get caught and don't end up impaling us. Even our gloves are puncture resistant. We have puncture resistant pants. We have requirements on chest protectors, which are hard chest protection in some cases. The blades themselves are designed to bend and flex, and if I can get this in camera, there we go. So they can be very, very safe. And if this does break, the metal itself is engineered to actually break flat. So the liability and risk with fencing is exceptionally tiny, like exceptionally tiny. It's wonderful. And so with that, athletes at all levels are almost, in terms of the equipment itself, safe and protected. The biggest risk is a fencer stepping forward and then turning their foot inwards and lunging wrong, and that's hurting their own knees. And so it's not the equipment, it's not the actual actions themselves that are the greatest risk to fencers. It's they themselves are the greatest risk to themselves. Because you get moving fast and you just step wrong. And part of being a good coach is recognizing that, making sure people are moving biomechanically correct, so that way you reduce or even prevent the risk of injury. All right. All of that said, these are some fencing age statistics. So I want to get into now more of fencing as an activity and the national scene and what that might look like. So USA fencing membership, I already said, 100-year age range. The mean age is 22 and a half. All right. The median age range, though, is 15. Most fencers, especially out of New Jersey, New York, and New England area up north, are in high school and even in middle school. And part of that is they don't have space for football stadiums, but they have space for gymnasiums. And if you have space for a gym, you have space for a fencing strip. And so a lot of these places, in addition to the basketball, volleyball, badminton, etc., will have fencing as a club activity at that establishment, at that high school, at that middle school, etc., and so on, at that community program. And so fencing specifically has a lot of youth participants. Pixie out towards Philadelphia, where Daryl Homer, one of the United States fencing Olympians, got his starts and got started in fencing, began in a middle school program that was initiated by Pixie out in Philly. And so Philly actually has this thriving and growing middle school and high school fencing program now, really accelerated by her and her efforts. And what it's leading to now, especially in terms of a college program, is this wonderful pool of potential fencers and people that are looking at colleges, sometimes specifically about where can they fence in college and where can they continue to fence going into college. Right now I have a handful of students at the West Shore Fencers Club, which is at a YMCA. And in that program, I have a number of youth students and some starting to look at colleges where one of the primary questions for them is if I think I'll still be at Shippensburg in a few years, because they would like to be able to fence in college and they know I coach there. So it leads to some interesting stuff, and now I want to dive into some statistics. So the United States Fencing Association acts as one of the best numeric counters of who is in fencing, because it is the national body. That being said, not everyone registers for a membership, because unless you're competing or going to competitions, there's no need to. So I would argue that as much as like 90% of your community local program for fencers never register with USFA. They show up, they take community classes, they go home. And then they might look for colleges later, or they might look for other programs later. But they don't necessarily want to go out and compete. And this is also true for middle school and high school fencers, because the school itself is managing the fencing. The student doesn't need to register with a national body. The school is managing the competition schedule. And that might even be true for your local community group. It might be competing against other places, but not necessarily through the national office. So it makes the numbers useful, because we can still look at that in terms of national body of fencers, but it does mean that we should take this number with a grain of salt, and that's why I have estimates listed here for times 2, times 5, times 10. I'm going to move myself out of the way briefly so we can read these. So we have total membership in the USFA is about 26,182. Of that, 35% are female, 65% are male, which is very interesting because in collegiate fencing, there are more women's teams than there are men's teams. They have to be coming from somewhere, right? Like, there has to be more of an appetite there and a more student availability than just this pool. So it's an interesting thing to think about in terms of like what the data shows versus what it doesn't. I've estimated in terms of like times 2, times 5, times 10, this number of fencers potentially out there who can be recruited from. If we look at fencers who are just under the age of 18, you've got about 172,000 potential people that this can appeal to across the country. Under 18 specifically, about 107,000, and if you're looking at that narrow range of like 14 to 17, very specifically just looking at college at this point, about 30,000 nationally. And like when thought about spread across the nation, that sounds really, really low. I know. Hold on. It won't sound that bad when we start looking at the area. So, geographically, we are in what's called the Harrisburg Division. Gettysburg is in what's called the Harrisburg Division. Inside of the Harrisburg Division, you have Gettysburg College, Shippensburg University, Dickinson College, and Millersville University. Inside of this area too, you have programs like the West Shore Fencers Club, Carlisle Fencing Club, York Fencing Club, Lancaster Fencing Academy, and Sal Hinton. I'm breaking up the naming schema. Sorry, guys. And we have a thriving fencing program out here. These are all pictures from various years of various groups and college groups. You'll see Westchester in these pictures, Kutztown, Temple are in these as well. That's Temple Sabre team. Bloomsburg's in there. And the reason why we're fencing outside the area or outside the division is this map. So geographically. Gettysburg is located in what's called Region 3. Regions are mainly for youth fencers, but there are things called ROCs or ROCs, where people compete on a national, on a pre-national, regional type level. And we're in Region 3 in this New England area. Region 3 is the most densely populated fencing group, next to Region 4, because California. So, USFA divisions. The US is broken down into 67 divisions. And like I said, we can see New England has a ton, California has a ton. These are your two geographic hotspots for fencing. I think the estimates are like a third of all fencers are in one of those two areas, and then the final third is spread across the rest of the country. This is a prime spot to be if you want to try and recruit for fencers. Especially because we are right next to Philly Division, we're right next to the various New Jersey divisions, we're right next to DC's division, Maryland, and I would argue even within a reasonable drive time down from New England area. And as I do that drive like several times a year for events, I would say, yeah, it's pretty reasonable. So, Harrisburg Division specifically is south central 13 counties of Pennsylvania. It's this red on the map. All right. So, collegiate fencing. These specifically, what's on this map, are Division 3 colleges. And it's a pretty, I think, telling indicator of where is fencing in the United States. Because it's all here. You have D1 schools that are scattered across the country, right? You have D1 schools. We're going to ignore those for this map. D3 schools specifically are right in this area. They basically go from Massachusetts down to Maryland, kind of just form a line. This top one are all of the men's colleges, or men's fencing teams, sorry. Men's and women's. And then down here on the bottom half These 4 colleges are women's colleges or women's only fencing teams. And so, again, we add these 4 onto the map above, and we still basically have a line from Massachusetts to Maryland. Oh, my face is in the way of the one on the right side. Move me over. All right, so there we go. There's one in Ohio. But short of that club in Michigan, and in Ohio, I don't know, is that Illinois? I don't remember anymore. Short of those 2 outlier clubs, everybody's in Massachusetts to Maryland. That is Division III fencing. Within Division III fencing, and within, actually, you know what? Yeah, that's where everybody is. So, in terms of Gettysburg looking at fencing as a recruitment opportunity, this is the area you want to be in if you want to use it as a way to advertise to people, especially from out of state or into the Philly area, into Maryland. You're right next to the Maryland line. It's really an ideal location to be in for this activity. And with that as well, in terms of using fencing as a way to generate accolades for the college and as a way to add gravitas to things. Achievement recognition. There are awards given by the USCA for Division I and Division III fencers, for coaches, teams, individuals, looking at things like all academic honors, all American awards, all region awards, Team of the Year awards, and Coach of the Year awards. And they're national level awards. It's pretty exciting. So this is a friend of mine, Dr. Stephen Howell, up at the University of Keystone College. And Stephen has done a fantastic job working with the college to market and advertise the program, where if you want a great template of how to grow a collegiate program as a recruitment tool, Stephen has done an amazing job. He has it where the university program also accepts local area people into the club. So it's almost like a community program, as well as being a course that students can actually take for credit, but then also as a club activity that people can just do. It really just checks every box. And it's allowed him then over the years to recruit students into the program and into the college who were looking for a program, weren't necessarily sold on any particular college, but were competitive fencers growing up, competitive either in high school programs, state programs, or so on, and who maybe didn't want to go to Penn State or couldn't make it to Penn State or didn't want to go to Princeton or one of these other colleges, whether it's because of location, how far away it was, or Keystone does have some really good programs and they happen to both like those programs and they liked the fact that they could go fence there. And so for the college and for Keystone, Stephen has done an amazing job. He has a room now that the college has given him specific for fencing. It's fantastic. We go up there I try to get up there at least once a year, bring my students up there, and it's a fantastic way then for the college to interact with the community, recruit from them, and get people fencing. All right. Now, all of that said, all right. I want to jump into cost real quick. I'm realizing I might not have organized this slide deck the best, but we're going to go with it. All right. So, cost for fencing. All of that said, it's not totally free. Unfortunately, the most expensive thing is me. Sorry, guys. Partially because it's hard to find fencing coaches. That is the really short statement. It is hard to find fencing coaches. Right now, the USFA and the USFCA are doing an amazing push on certifications, on training, on advertising for coaches, on advertising for positions, and then accolading and like advertising and then hyping up when people get into the collegiate coaching positions. I've been bombarded by newsletters of new coaches entering different universities and colleges across the country and advertising for those programs, both as a way of celebrating that there are more coaches out in the wider world, but then also the growth of collegiate programs and how much that's upticking in the past couple of years. So, coach median salaries are anywhere between 30 to 60K. It's really hard to get good data on this. I'm going to be very honest and upfront with that. I work as a consultant for my day, so I bill by the hour. And getting a salary rate is exceptionally hard for fencing coaching programs outside of a handful of exceptionally large programs. And for especially colleges, the data is really skewed because a lot of fencing coaches, I would even say the majority of them, are also professors at that college. And so they're paid on both their fencing and on whatever they teach in terms of programs. So, like I said, Dr. Howe, he's a professor at Keystone. You have Dr. Bratton down in Carlisle. He's a professor at the Army War College. Although his program is in town, not at the college. But still, Dr. Bradford, Vinnie Bradford. They are a professor in Texas, and they're fencing coach. I could go on. They're Vassar College, Dr. Bruce Gilman. He's a professor, and he's their head fencing coach. And so you get that a lot. And so it skews the data because they're paid both as professors and as fencing coaches. So I have a second number here in terms of cost, which is dollars per hour. On the low end, you see like 15. On the high end, the highest that I really know of is like $240 an hour. But that might actually not be the high end. That is the high end that I know of out of like Philadelphia or DC. So if we're talking like really high-end international Olympic coaches or Southern California prices, that might be even higher. But the highest that I like realistically know of is $240 an hour. And the reason it's so high is because in DC area or Philly area, it's not uncommon for coaches to bill for 20-minute lessons. Block 3 of those in an hour, $80 a lesson. That's the cost. And to be fair though, private lessons are one of the best ways for producing higher next level fencers. This is also why we see in some cases so few collegiate fencing programs, because remember what I said about every weapon is different? So every group and club, if they want to build and expand out the program, will typically have a foil coach, a saber coach, an épée coach, and then potentially a head coach on top of that. And because fencing is gendered, men and women, you might take these 3 foil épée saber coaches and have a women's coach separately. And so you might end up with like 7 coaches, or if you might have like a head coach of say a team and separately then too, because team fences a little differently, it can start to really rapidly expand. I'm going to sell myself here and say I'm certified in all 3 weapons, so you don't have to. I lower that cost barrier to entry because I can coach all 3 weapons. I'm certified and trained to teach all 3 weapons. That's my foil. So it changes things. I'm a value option. I don't know how I feel about that statement, but I'm a value option on that one. All right, equipment. Fencing equipment to me is like kind of affordable coming from like hockey before, or football, even tennis with like the fancy rackets. It's the most expensive like grip on the market is this one. And it's more of an art piece than it is a grip because it's 3D printed titanium and is $300. No one needs this. Ever. No one needs this. Instead, what you actually need to get started is very little. A very basic beginner epee kit or beginner foil kit, it's like 160, 170 bucks. That easy. And for Gettysburg, shipping's not even that much of a concern because two of the largest equipment vendors in the country are in New Jersey. You're right here. You're in a perfect location for this. On the high end, ignoring this nonsense, for a starter set from Absolute again, it's $400 to $600 on the really high end. Gets you an amazing setup that will last years, either for individuals or even for clubs. It's kind of a running joke in the fencing world about how long some fencing gear can last. I've used weapons that are like 70 years old and that are still just going along and haven't died. They're great. And so maintenance costs for protector equipment as well can be really low. I have jackets that are like 3 times my age, but are still safe. They still pass all of the safety checks and all of the safety tests, and they work. And I wash them because at that age you need them to, and they work. And so it long term really reduces the cost and expenses. And as you can tell by me talking about how old some of this equipment is, the technology in fencing hasn't changed radically. It's improved, but for beginner classes where the main priority is get them to move like fencers, the priority isn't to get them to handle ridiculous fancy equipment, because they don't know the difference yet. And so it means for establishing a club, for purchasing equipment, for building that out long term and then sustaining it, it's exceptionally sustainable. And the nice part is, depending on what weapon you want to start with, and Gettysburg already has a fair amount of equipment overall, the base protective layers are identical for all 3 weapons. It's what makes it really honestly affordable, and where I can pack a single large trunk to take with me out to Minnesota for nationals this summer. The maintenance costs though change, so I'm gonna try and bring this up to focus. This is a epee. There's a little button on the tip and a little socket down here in the grip. There's a wire that runs along it, and when I press this tip down, there's a little spring that one pushes the tip up, and then there's a second spring on the tip that makes contact with those 2 wires. There are 2 wires, sorry, in the blade, and completes a circuit. Some really basic electrical engineering that has not changed for 100 years. With that, I score a touch, and that's how we score touches in epee. So the maintenance for epee is more expensive because I have to maintain this tip, and I have to maintain 2 wires down a blade to make sure they both work, and then wire my socket correctly. Foil only has 1 wire, so it's a little easier, it's a little cheaper. And then saber has no wires down the blade. The entire blade is electrified, so the maintenance costs for it are very low. So in terms of building out equipment for a club and getting a club going, thinking long term, saber is your highest buy-in, because you have to buy all metal outer equipment, but then that can last you for a long time in terms of protective gear. But the weapons themselves need next to no maintenance. Foil has both moderate buy-in, need a metal lame, and a 1-wire weapon. And then epee has low buy-in, because there's no additional equipment on the body needed, but the weapons cost more to long-term maintain. So those are the thoughts in terms of the cost there. Then there are various certifications organizations and membership costs that are optional, but give a lot of perks potentially. So you have Women Fencing, which is a women-specific fencing association, and works to promote and encourage and train women in fencing and women coaches in fencing. That's a $35 a year. You have USFA, affiliate clubs. This is what Shippensburg is. This is what York is. This is what West Shore is. This is what Hinton is. This is the standard for most clubs. And what it means is you have no insurance through the United States Fencing Association. So you buy insurance on your own, or you get insurance through your parents' association. So Shippensburg or Gettysburg College, so on. And you purchase an affiliate membership, and it gives you the right to host sanctioned tournaments, along with get discounted memberships for collegiate fencers, and even give 4 free collegiate memberships away to your club students. And so it immediately pays for itself if you want to run tournaments, because a competitive membership is $90. So affiliate is $50. You hand out 3 memberships, and suddenly you have covered the entire cost of one person's competitive membership and the affiliate club. It's great. And you still afford to go out. So collegiate competitive memberships then, after those 4, are $50 each. So they're nearly half price. And I'm putting emphasis on that, but not everyone even needs it. For the longest time, and for even now, almost every single collegiate fencer in the Harrisburg division is not a member of USFA. We fence independently of them. We fence each other as colleges. We arrange tournaments. We go out to each other's events. And we self-referee, because we're not competing for national points. We're not competing for going on to the national or national podiums. We're just fencing to fence. And it lowers that cost and barrier to entry. That being said, for my students that do want to go out and compete nationally and go out and compete on a greater scene and go out and travel to tournaments and win medals at different events, it's how we get there. It's becoming USFA competitive is how they can move to that next level. And so for us, it's really allowed Shippensburg to enter that next level of competitive fencing by fencing higher level opponents, by becoming higher level themselves after going out, seeing it, fencing against it, and learning from it. And then also, it's one of the best ways to recruit. It's one of the best ways to advertise. Because if you're going to a tournament, the people that you're competing against are also the type of people who are dedicated and interested in fencing. And with tournaments, this past weekend, we were up in the Poconos. I've been in Maryland. Let's see, where else have I been this year for tournaments? Maryland, New Jersey, Virginia, Connecticut. Have I been to Massachusetts? I don't remember if I've been to Massachusetts or not. I've been to Massachusetts for fencing, but for something else. I know that. New York, and Minnesota for nationals. That's where I've been just this year. And so when I go to those, I take my Shippensburg shirt, plop it on a chair, and then we'll frequently have parents walk up to me and start asking questions about how can their son go fence at college, or how can their daughter get into college doing fencing there. It's one of the best recruiting tools, because I'm not just there as a recruiter kind of hanging back observing. It's either my students are actively competing and we get to kind of see each other fence and we get to bond over that experience, but it's also as a competitive fencer, as somebody who can still actively go out and compete on the strip, you get to make friends stabbing each other, right? It's a unique experience. And so from that, you end up with people who, just because they like how you fence and like getting fenced you, or their parents like how you fenced with them, start looking at coming to college with you, and start looking at fencing for you, or start fencing with you and at you. So it's an exciting time. Nope, not just yet. Other memberships. You have the U.S. Fencing Association of Collegiate Fencing Clubs, USFCFC, USA CFC. All these acronyms are complicated. That is an annual membership of $150 with a $575 per gender team. So that one is team only. This is actually not something that Shippensburg has participated in yet. It's something we want to. It's a goal for them moving forward as we try to build out all three weapons successfully. Um, and yeah, I've been excited about it for a while, and it would be a wonderful milestone. And then you also have the National Intercollegiate Women's Fencing Association, which I believe has been around for like 80 years, nearly 100. I think 1920s was when it was founded. And that one has 125 annual membership and then a team entry of 650. So for those ones, or for that last one, it is women's specific. And it is also, again, women's team fencing, which is kind of cool. So that's all 3 weapons. And for team fencing, you actually need 3 people per team. I should mention that. For individual fencing, you can have as many as you want. As many fencers as you can fit into a tournament is however many you can get going. So for some events, we have taken, let's see here, I've taken up to 20 if we've done an entire club event. And sometimes as small as like 2 or 3 or 1 even. All right, hiring coaches. The USFA advertises for coaches if you want to take a look at comparative job postings and what those might look like. And then the USFCA, so the Coaches Association, also does the exact same sort of thing. Switch weapons. So, yeah, take a look at those. Get a better idea of like what groups are posting for things, or even potentially look at what salaries they have posted if you're trying to use that as like an indicator of what things should cost. All right, fencers. Here are some of mine. So we've got saberist on the upper top left, this guy. You've got foilist on the right, and epee down below. This is where we were at Temple. So we actually drove all the way out to Temple University and fenced against them. And there were a couple other colleges out from New Jersey that had drove in for that. And yeah, we had a pretty darn great time. It's the first time actually 3 of the people in that picture had ever fenced saber. And they held their own. It was pretty good. Yay, more of my students. All right, medal pictures. So, I tried to grab medal photos specifically, and especially showing my students having won medals. So, and also kind of showing your age range and recruitment range. So, I'm going to top left. She is a, let's see if I can get my mouse visible, this one. I believe she is 16 and is also rated in the top 2 nationally. Fantastic fencer to fence against. I beat her this past weekend in a wonderful foil event. And here we have Ed Ploy, and please excuse me, I don't remember your name, a veteran fencer who had popped up to fence out of North Carolina. So he's out of North Carolina and he's fencing in the Poconos. I don't understand either. This was about a month or 2 ago. This was 2 separate tournaments that were being run side by side. We have 1, 2, 3 of my fencers at Shippensburg University who took home bronzes. And we have a student of mine from the West Shore Fencers Club who took home a silver. And technically, if we want to look at it this other way too, this fencer right here is a fellow coach, but also one of my students at West Shore Fencers Club, and out and about, took home the gold. And we have the former coach of the Lebanon Fencing Club taking home the gold, and Kim, the current coach of York, taking home silver. That's what I love about fencing, is there's no cap. You can keep going. All right, this one right here. We have fencer from New Jersey. I believe his name is Ethan. I keep seeing him every now and then. Fences fantastically well. I met him again at Nationals. He took gold in epee here. And then my student right to the left of me is Peter. And he is, let's see here, 1, 2, 2 pictures here with bronzes. Peter is a fantastically competitive individual. I'm very happy to be his coach, and is been consistently going out to tournaments and is starting to now like consistently medal, and it's pretty awesome. All right, we have Everest here. Everest has now joined the top 2% in the country. He is a rated epee fencer. We have Charlie, who is the student I was actually talking about that got recruited to Keystone specifically to fence because he wanted to fence in college and he liked a program Keystone had, and it was perfect for him. And we have my assistant coach down there, and gonna keep going on. Okay. If I don't know why this is the next slide, but it is. So, because it's the last slide. Oh, okay. So, so if you need any more additional information, check out these links. They should be hopefully helpful. And with that, I'm going to switch to a camera so that way we can talk. Okay. Whew. That was a lot of information. A lot of information on fencing, a lot of information on me, and I'm going to try and think of anything I've missed on that. All right. Recruitment for colleges specifically. It's a wonderful tool. You get a lot of fencers. I mean, you know what? I'm going to stick with that phrasing. You get a number of fencers who would like to be able to fence in college, and don't always know where they can. And with Division I athletics, as cutthroat as it is, it's oftentimes they look at it and go, well, I can't fence in D1. I guess I just have to stop fencing. So that's not the case, though. A friend of mine and coach now at LFA, Lancaster Fencing Academy, used to fence for St. John's up in New York. And part of the reason that they went there, besides St. John's having a pretty okay program for what they wanted to do, had a fencing team. And this individual was not rated. They were not a high-ranked fencer, but they were a good fencer. And they wanted to go to college, and they wanted to fence there. And so they found a program that they could fence in college at. And talking with a lot of the other universities and colleges out in the scene, it really is a consistent theme with how a lot of them get their fencers, is people that are coming through middle school, even into high school, and who are active fencers, especially in this area. Philadelphia, New Jersey, New York, New England area, even into Maryland, then especially DC. Huge fencing population, huge youth fencing population. And trust me, I've been beaten by so many of them. They're like half my size, and then they beat me. So they're a huge youth fencing population. And they start getting into high school, and they're like, well, where can I go fence? How do I get on a fencing team in college? And they start looking around. They start shopping for colleges based on where can they continue to fence. And where they end up then are places that have those programs. And so as a recruitment tool, I really can't emphasize enough how useful it can be for a college to differentiate itself. And I know in my inbox right now, I have a handful of parents who have emailed me from various tournaments I've met them at, who are specifically asking, what can my student do to get noticed by a college and get recruited to that college? Sometimes they're specifically asking about what scholarships they can receive. Sometimes they're specifically asking about just how do they even get in contact with a coach. A lot of fencing coaches are sometimes hard to get a hold of. Okay, I'm slightly guilty of this, but I'm at least at tournaments all the time, and so I'm a high visibility coach. And you never would have guessed with this mustache, right? So I'm easy to spot, and so a lot of parents who over multiple tournaments, over multiple years, will just have conversations about recruitment, about college offerings, about where can their kid fence in college. And over the years, I've tried to be like, Shippensburg has a program, but part of the reason why I'm so interested in Gettysburg's is Annette, with Director of Athletics, has already been so, how to say, involved, active, proactive, healthy about trying to make this a reality. And it's the sort of support that is needed to get these programs really going and past being just a club and move them to the next level. And as much as obviously I love and enjoy Shippensburg, it's something that we've historically just not been able to get the support on. And getting to talk to Annette and hear that support coming for Gettysburg and for the program, it's been amazing. It's been completely mind blowing. It's such a difference, and it's such a healthy difference. And I don't know if it's program or people. I don't want to make any assumptions or say anything there. It's a difference in, I think, where programs are and a cost benefit potentially analysis and like where they see recruitment tools. And if Gettysburg would like to see fencing as a recruitment tool, I am more than happy to try and help sell that, because it is. And I don't think I actually have to sell all that hard. The program costs are relatively, to my opinion, especially in terms of athletics, relatively affordable. Um, and at the nice benefit for Gettysburg, if you guys were to go with me and work with me on this is where I get to sell myself a little bit. No matter what, you would have to come back and interact with me anyways. Because right now, at least right now, maybe not in a couple years, but at least right now, I run a fencing club. I run coaching at multiple clubs in the area. I am one of a handful, literally just a handful, certified coaches in this area. I am one of like maybe four, maybe five. And the number keeps rising. But even then, like still a handful of Monitor at Arms coaches in the Harrisburg division. It's really hard to be a through weapon coach and through weapon fencer. I really can't undersell that part. It's hard. There's a reason why like I was the only one at nationals. And so with that said, the nice part of if you were to work with me is I can coach all through weapons. I do all through weapons. And I like to think that by doing so, I would make it financially viable for Gettysburg to be able to do team events, to be able to field all three weapons, to be able to have access to my garage and house that is unfortunately or fortunately for Gettysburg like 50% swords and equipment. I'm not joking. I have clothing racks in my garage, like 6 of them of uniforms. It's a problem. So it's one of those things that I want to proponent and that I want to facilitate and assist with no matter what happens. And if Gettysburg wants to work with me on it, it's something that I'm used to collegiate programs already. It's the benefit of working with me there. I'm used to collegiate programs already. I know parts of how they work. And I'm more than excited to be able to learn the parts that I don't already know. We talked about Title IX a little bit with Annette. Men and women's teams in terms of fencing and gender and how you have to build those out equally for Title IX, right? Classically, what makes it unattainable for colleges are the cost of coaches relative to like the bring in of the students. With Shippensburg, what we've seen gender-wise is either parity, men, women, or in my 9 years of fencing there, we have only had 1 year where male students outnumbered female students in terms of on the club. It has been an exceptionally female-dominated club, wonderfully so. One of the biggest questions I think concerns Annette had with me on the phone was, how do we field an equal number? How do we get women into fencing? And sometimes you really just don't have to. Like, as simple as that. The biggest thing is fostering a healthy environment where people are safe and are having fun and can also go win at tournaments, right? But like, side note, it's having a healthy, safe, fun environment where they want to be, they want to compete out of, they want to go to. And I like to think that we've done that at Ship really, really well. And we've been able to make that a safe place. We've been able to make that a fantastic club environment where not only are people happy there and safe there and collegiately able to have accolades and medals and achievements for the college and downstream people or people coming up through high school are then looking at Shippensburg as an option specifically because of those achievements and accolades and because it's a safe place. But it shows that we've really grown that program successfully. And I would love the opportunity to be able to do the same at Gettysburg. It's one of those things where I like fencing. I like swords. I like to build it out more. I love to see it grow. So this has been a very long-winded talk. I was hoping this would be significantly shorter, and I'm about to sneeze. I'm back. Okay. But I hope it helped answer questions. I hope it moves things in a positive direction. So, yeah, you have my email, you have my contact information. Please feel free to reach back out and let me know.